Hello, it's Mark Murphy back with TravelTube.com. Before we get into this week's episode, do me a favor, hop on over to the site, TravelTube.com, opt in with your email. We won't spam you. You just get the email newsletter once a week that shows you the travel experts like travel advisors, as well as travel influencers, as well as my podcast of the week. You'll get that, and you'll be one of the first to actually see it and have access to it. If you want to see what your peers are doing, if you want to see insights into some undiscovered destinations you've never visited personally, some great stuff that people are out there and they're out there gathering, and we're bringing it all together on TravelTube.com, the travel expert channel. Now, with that said, let's get into this week. Have you thought about retiring on a cruise ship or working remotely from one, if not at that life stage? People are doing it. I'm going to talk about that. What about the U.S. requiring travelers from 50 countries to put up a $15,000 bond for the privilege of coming to our country to spend money? This is ridiculous, some scream. Is it going to kill travel to the U.S.? The Reddit crowd has an opinion on it. I'm going to share that with you. And not shocking, they're way off base, but we'll get to that. How about the Iran war? It's currently on hold. Does that mean, well, I'm sorry, my neck, hang on. I got whiplash. Okay. Yeah, it's on hold for now. We'll see what happens. By the time you watch this or listen to this, yeah, we could be back at war again. I'm not betting on anything. But if it's truly a ceasefire, do we think tourism is coming back to the Middle East? And the question is, how long will that take? And of course, excuse me, Great Britain has a strategy for their soaring energy costs, which have gotten far worse since the Iran war broke out, but we're already completely out of control. And here's their strategy. If something doesn't work, just do more of it. Well done, Great Britain. I'm going to share that with you. And then maybe I'll mention the fact that we have more and more people leaving the state of California, big time liberals, big time entertainment people, the Hollywood crowd, etc. And wow, of course, entrepreneurs are smart with this wealth tax pending. They've already pulled out $1 trillion in wealth, because if you've earned it, you've paid taxes while you earned it. If you sell stock, you pay taxes on it. When you die, the federal government keeps 40% above a threshold, which I believe for this coming year is going to be $30 million. They're going to get taxed literally to death at death, but they're not waiting to die. They're getting the hell out of California, because capital goes where it's treated best. And I might touch on that. The latest is J.J. Abrams. So anyway, again, a reminder to subscribe on TravelTube.com. Follow us on your favorite podcast apps and social media. I ask you, please, if you're a travel agent or a travel supplier, do that for us, because it helps with the rankings. It gets the word out. And this whole business is focused on positioning travel advisors as the travel experts. All right. With that said, are you approaching retirement? Maybe, maybe not. I was retired for 5 years because of a non-compete, but then I started TravelTube.com because I have mental illness. There's obviously something wrong with me because I don't need to work. That's why I ask you to subscribe, because I could just be out reading a book next to my pool right now. Instead, I'm doing this. And I got people gathering your content and sharing it. I got a guy doing social media promotions. I got a guy doing the email. I got a guy building the website. We're actually in the middle of a redesign. But here I sit in my office on a beautiful sunny day in Fort Lauderdale. So the least you can do is follow us. All right, that's enough of that. Anyway, so if you're not in retirement yet, but you can work remotely, would you consider living on a cruise ship? Like year round. Forget your apartment, forget your house. Would you do that? Would you consider one of those 55 plus communities if you're in that stage of life, like the Villages in Florida? Well, these cruise ships are like the Villages without the golf courses on water, I guess, to some extent. So living on a cruise ship. Well, what we're finding is that there are more and more products coming out to address this. And we see that some retirees and remote workers have made that move, and they are raving about it. Now, the World Residences is a ship that launched, I think, over 2 decades ago, if I'm right. But if I'm not, so be it. Doesn't really matter. The idea is they were the first ones out there where you could basically buy a condo at sea and live there full time. You had some monthly costs because you're getting your food, you're getting housekeeping services a couple of times a week, whatever it is. So you have some ancillary costs, but a lot of people will tell you, especially high net worth individuals will tell you it's far cheaper to live on a cruise ship than it is to live in New York City, for example. In fact, I could make the case that if you're paying for a one-bedroom apartment in Midtown Manhattan and incurring the taxes and everything else on that ship, if you could get a remote job and live on a cruise ship, you would actually save money. That's a fact. Now, would I do it? Nah, not for me. Not for me. Don't mind cruises. Cruises are great. I just can't imagine living on a cruise ship unless I'm working on it, and I have no intention to ever work on a cruise ship. Maybe I could be a cruise director. What do you think? Cruise director, Mark Murphy? And I could be like, and now I am modeling Fiji water for you folks and getting a little kicker. Go to my website at markmurphytravels.com/Fiji. Oh, I'm kidding. Anyway, somebody made a comment about me drinking Fiji water like I was some kind of elite snob. FYI, this is a plug, but I don't make any money. I get 4 cases of this water delivered once a month. It works out to $1 a bottle. So yeah, whoa, very elite, so elite. And I love the taste. I don't know why, I just do. So anyway, but back to the cruise ship. I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago, give or take, some people were ready to go on a cruise ship, disappear, travel around the world. They literally sold their homes, sold their possessions, just brought what they needed, flew to Turkey, if I recall. 2 weeks before the ship was set to depart, the ship still hasn't departed, and many were stranded. And of course, they sold their possessions, they sold their cars, they sold everything. Because you're on a cruise ship. You're not going to pay for cars and car insurance and property taxes, even if you don't have a mortgage. You're going to save all that money. But now they're standing there in a foreign country and they're not getting on the damn ship because the ship never appeared. So that really sucks. 2 weeks away from boarding. So it's important, if you want to do this, make sure you vet what's out there. And I would look at an established player like the World Residences, because people will resell them. Because you can buy them in the secondary market versus the people that bought it first time out of the gate. And since it's been around a while, you probably think it's probably going to stick around. The problem you might have with some of these world cruises is you're going to spend a few $100,000 to buy your cabin, or you could spend millions. There's a new one that's coming out that's you could spend as much as $4 or $5 million for a cabin. Now, we're talking a cabin that's like a big apartment. Okay, we're talking in some cases 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, et cetera. But you don't get that money back because a cruise ship, like an automobile, is a depreciating asset. It has a certain lifetime of usage. It can be in use for a certain period of time, and then eventually it gets scrapped. So it'll be a depreciating asset, but it's a lifestyle choice. And for those who did get the chance to explore the world via, like a permanent cabin on a cruise ship, like the World Residences, the initial love in some cases faded after a few years at sea. And here's how one person described it. I'll read you the quote. Here it is. Quote, "I especially enjoyed the first few years when it had the newness factor," he says. "But as my father used to say about being around the same people, it's like being around freshly caught fish. At first they're great, but after a while they start to smell." Yeah, imagine you're on a ship and you've got your neighbors and they're just not good people, or they're just annoying, or whatever it happens to be. There's not a lot of room, folks. You're in a public space. Everyone has access to that public space. If you've got a house with a yard, your outdoor space is your outdoor space. Now, you could argue, oh, they have a balcony. Balconies aren't that big. So the public spaces on the ship, if you're around a bunch of people and maybe you only like half of them. I mean, you don't have to like everybody. People can annoy you. It's okay. And he brought up a great point. In the beginning, it was really great. But after 2 or 3 years, and he said, I'm not doing it. So here's a tip. If I was considering living on a cruise ship, I would not buy a condo on a cruise ship, right? I would not do it. What I would do is I might book like a world cruise or a part of a world cruise where you could book 90 days, 180 days. You could go out. You could basically live on it for a year and a half if you want. I mean, just a lot of these lines have these world cruises. They're older ships, and they go all over the place, and they sell it in segments. So you don't have to buy the whole thing, but I would say do like a 60 or 90 day type of cruise. Pick a part of the world that you find fascinating because you're going to stop in a lot of places. And then if you like it, then you can go full on to home at sea. That's my 2 cents. So that's it with the ships at sea. Those are my thoughts. Now let's go on to the U.S. requiring travelers from 50 countries to pay up to $15,000 to visit. So what do you need to know? Let me show you the headline here because it's kind of fascinating how some of this stuff gets positioned. So where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Oh dear, I know where it is. It's in Apple News, which is really annoying, but hey, it is what it is. So I got to pull it up. All right. Newsweek, where are you, buddy? I'm sorry. I see it. I've already got Newsweek out there. There we go. I didn't see it right away. So let me share this story. Okay. Let me go bigger here so we get a better view. And let's try to squeeze that down so you can really see it. U.S. visa rules changed, list of countries impacted. The visa bond policy, first introduced as a pilot, has now expanded significantly because it went from 38 countries, just so everybody knows, to now 50 countries. And certain applicants could be required to post a bond of $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 before a visa is issued. This is, just so everybody understands, it's to deter overstays. Meaning if you've got a $15,000 bond and you overstay your visa, which we will know because you didn't leave the country, then what will happen in that case is you will lose that $15,000. And there are people that think that that's an awful idea. And I'll tell you why it's a really good idea. It's a great idea. Now, one of the articles I found had a deck that said it's about to get way more expensive to visit the United States for some tourism and business travelers. And I'm saying to myself, it's a bond. Sure, you might have a few fees associated with that bond, but you do have visa fees virtually in every country that you travel to these days. Application fees, whether it's ESTA or EES or whatever it happens to be in various countries or regions or the EU, et cetera. So I don't know how, if you come to the country, you don't overstay your visa and you leave and you get your money back, how that's making it more expensive. But that's journalism for you folks, because journalists can't do math. All right. And forget about like numbers and business stuff. Yeah. And by the way, I've had a lot of journalists who've worked for me over the last few decades, just saying. So I know a little bit about journalists. And of course, I've done a lot of interviews with people on TV. And I'll just digress for one moment. Imagine you're being interviewed by somebody and they have no clue what you're even saying, because they'll ask you a question and they'll be looking at the camera while they're asking the question. And then it'll cut to me for the answer. And then they'll be like, and I really remember this at CBS LA when I did an interview years ago. I was like, these two clowns are so awful that I could tell them that, yeah, I went to Thailand, and when I was on a zip line, this monkey jumped on my back. And as the zip line failed, thank God the monkey jumped on my back, because the monkey had a parachute. He grabbed me tightly, pulled the ripcord, and we gently landed on the ground. The monkey saved my life. I could have said that as an answer to any question. They could have said, so Mark, tell me about your new book. It's called Travel Unscripted. And I could have said that. They would not have processed 1 second of what I just said. And then they would just ask me another question. No follow-up question. No, well, that's interesting or whatever. Or what was that like? No, it was like, here are the 5 questions we're going to ask. Not that they tell you in advance. And then whatever you say, it doesn't change the script, because they're on a script. They're on a script. They're on a script. That's why they call them news readers, because most of them suck. Some are really good. I know a lot of the folks on the right aren't big fans of a former Fox News guy, Neil Cavuto. But Neil Cavuto, in my opinion, throughout all of the interviews I've ever done, was the best guy in terms of interviewing, extracting information, doing follow-ups. There was never, hey, Mark. It would be like, hey, Mark, can you come in and talk about the battery that caught fire on the Japan Airlines flight or whatever it was? And, on the new Dreamliners, blah, 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 whatever. And then it might go in a totally different direction. And I never knew where it was going to go. And we just went with the flow. That's the kind of interview that I think is fantastic, but not the case when it comes to the average journalist. Unfortunately, Neil retired, and I don't go on with him anymore, but I think Will Kane is doing a great job. Although I don't really watch his show that much. I do catch parts of it. But anyway, so the purpose of the bond, let's go back to the bond. The purpose of the bond is to target countries where visitors who come from those countries typically overstay their tourist visas. Typically. It's like a common theme. Kind of like Somali fraud. Yeah, I said it. And FYI, these aren't the countries that fuel the tourism engine of the US. But over on Reddit, the geniuses there think it's going to kill international arrivals. I implore you to try not to laugh as we explore this thread from the folks on Reddit, because there are a lot of uninformed people, and I will tell you that some of them are more uninformed than others. That is a fact. So let me pull that up for you. Give me one moment. Here it comes. Give me some Reddit stuff, people. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Oh, I thought I had already pulled that up. Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. There it is. Gosh, I think I need to get my eyes checked. I'm going blind. Now, this will be easy. No one's going to be able to read this, by the way, even if you're watching the video, unless you're on like a wide screen, because it's like 12-point type, and it's on this little video player. But obviously, if you're listening in your car or whatever, you'll be able to get the gist. The top 1% commenter, Bearded Man 32, he's Bearded Man. Well, Bearded Man says that should put the final nail in the coffin for international tourism. Wow. Okay. Somebody with a brain said, probably not. Program already exists. Bonds are a case-by-case basis. And this person went on to say that they have family from one of the countries that's on it, and they visited multiple times. They were never asked to pay a bond. Okay. So that's number one. And then he said, let me reframe the question. Do you think this will increase tourism in the USA? So we went from it's going to destroy tourism in the USA to, well, do you think it's going to increase tourism? No, it's not going to increase tourism. In fact, it's going to keep the cheaters who come with the intent of overstaying from never coming. Get it? It's kind of like if you don't give them free phones, free hotels, free airfare, and send them anywhere you want in the country while giving them social services, Social Security, Medicaid, SNAP benefits. If you take all that stuff away, you don't have people coming to our country illegally, because guess what? They gotta figure out how to feed themselves, where they're gonna live, all of these things. It stops it in its tracks, because you can't have an open border with socialized benefits. You just can't. Doesn't work. But it's really kind of funny, because people are like, 15,000 is insane. I would reconsider travel to a country that charged me $500, even just as a deposit. Then Wonderland Citizen, another genius, comes up, same. And then this is the best comment of all. Super easy for the U.S. to keep their $15,000 bond if ICE arrests the travelers and makes them overstay their visa. Okay, for the retard, spinning colors, so you think that the reason the bond is put in place is to help the U.S. make money because they're going to arrest you with ICE when you're here on a tourist visa legally, right? And then they're going to keep the bond. Okay, number one, the only way you get arrested if you're here legally on a tourist visa or a business travel, you're here for business travel, as if you commit a freaking crime, folks. And it's not a crime to come to the US on vacation. Okay? But back to the people that think it's going to destroy travel to the US. Again, it doesn't take much to figure this out, but if you simply go into Grok or ChatGPT or any of the AI tools and just type in, what percentage of tourism arrivals to the United States come from the 50 countries on the visa bond program, blah, 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 blah. What percentage of the overall inbound travel from overseas is related to those 50 countries? It has a 5 in it, folks, 0.05%. And if you have to have a bond because they're coming under false pretenses many of the times from those countries in order to actively overstay their visa, they're probably not staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Marina del Rey, folks, okay? They're probably not going out and having drinks and eating at restaurants and doing tours. They're coming here for a very different reason. The reason? To overstay. So that's why we're doing it. And guess what? It's working. It's working. Right now, our return rate is 97%. And that was under the partial 38 country list. Partial. Now it's 50. So we're going to have fewer and fewer people breaking our laws and staying here illegally. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. They have their own country. They can go back to it. And if we find them breaking those entry requirements in the past, they don't have to worry about the bond. They're not getting the visa because that's how it works. But God forbid the truth gets in the way for some of these folks. So that's a little bit of the Reddit crowd. So it has virtually zero impact on actual tourism. We just have a tool to keep them from gaming the system and getting that opportunity to actually overstay. That's it. And if they do, with the 15 grand, they're going to lose it. And no, ICE isn't going to arrest them and not going to confiscate their bond. And by the way, if they're in custody for some reason and they took, quote, overstay because they're in custody, I don't think the U.S. is going to be able to keep them because the premise is if you overstay your visa. But if you're incarcerated, you have no say in the matter. You figuring it out yet there, Redditors? Okay, great. So with the Iran war right now on hold, as I share this, do we think that tourism is coming back to the Middle East anytime soon? I mean, there's always something going on in the Middle East. I've been there many times. There's always something. I don't think it's coming back anytime soon, since the ceasefire could be over as I'm recording this. Literally. Well, speaking of Iran, which makes me think of our so-called allies, I think of the wonderful Great Britain. Now, some of you might not be surprised. I know I'm not. But Great Britain recently urged the G7 to accelerate clean energy push amid global turmoil. I'm going to read that again. Britain urges G7 to accelerate clean energy push amid global turmoil. How's that green energy push work so far? Anybody know? A great website, by the way, to check out. It's called oilprices.com, oilprices.com, because it covers a lot of the stuff along with the geopolitics, the fossil fuel industry, as well as renewables and a whole bunch of other stuff. But here's what's amazing. Right before the whole Iran war started, Europeans were paying 3 to 5 times more and as much as 10 times more than people in the US for natural gas. What's crazy about that is it all has to be imported. So of course they're going to pay more because in the US, we are the natural gas Mecca, if you would. We are the Saudi Arabia, if you would, of natural gas. We have a ton of natural gas. And for all the green lunatics and the climate change lunatics, recently, Europe said that they're going to consider natural gas a green energy. Interesting. They also now consider nuclear green energy. Someone needs to tell the people over in Germany that blew up their nuclear reactors, yeah, that was probably a bad idea because now it's green. In fact, if you want zero carbon emissions, there's no better way to do it than that. But they've blocked nuclear energy at every turn. But what's interesting is in the UK, I had a family member here from the UK just recently. They're paying $10 equivalent for a gallon of gas in the UK. And before the ceasefire, we hit $4 across the country on average for gas. So they're paying 1.5 times what we're paying. Now, what's crazy is before the conflict and all of last year, it was hovering under $3 per gallon, and they were around $8 a gallon. Now, I could pull up the videos, but you can go find them. Go look at various administrations over the years. And there were some administrations that explicitly stated, and some to this day will still state, that they want to see higher gas prices in the US because it'll force more people to drive electric cars, and it'll be greener according to their logic, and that would be a good thing. That would be a good thing. In fact, I believe one of the cabinet members of the Obama administration, I don't recall his name off the top of my head, but he talked about, or it might have been an advisor, he talked about $8 gas. They wanted to see $8 gas in the US because of climate change. So, excuse me, how has that worked out? How is that working out right now for the folks in the UK, Germany, et cetera? Let's take Germany. Germany is an was an industrial powerhouse. What happened? Well, the Nord Stream pipeline got blown up. Then they got rid of coal plants and nuclear plants, and now they got to import everything. So cheap energy is the lifeblood of manufacturing. They're getting killed right now, absolutely destroyed. And Great Britain can't see it because their leaders are such morons. So they're doubling down on a policy that is a disaster for their people, that is a proven disaster for their people, while at the same time, they could look at the US and say, wow, your carbon emissions dropped 20% since 2000. What did you guys do? Was everybody, with a battery pack? How'd you guys do this? We shifted from cleaner burning natural gas to natural gas from things like coal and oil in terms of our mix. So without doing anything other than that shift, we were able to bring down greenhouse gases by 20%, which actually exceeded the Paris Accord limits that we walked away from under Trump 1.0. And what's crazy about all of this is this green craziness has been going on literally for decades. So how has it worked out? Prices through the roof. People ask me like, well, why do you care, Mark? It's you probably don't care about the price of gas or whatever. And I said, and then they're like, well, what does this have to do with travel? Well, if you don't have, let's be specific, airplanes. If you don't have jet fuel, you can't fly them. So what's happened in the UK? Some airlines have actually canceled flights like galore because they had 48 hours of jet fuel available. And where was their jet fuel coming from? From the Middle East, from the Strait of Hormuz. So they've canceled flights, and some have just stopped flying as a result of not being able to access jet fuel, which, FYI, for the folks in Portland again, that's actually made from fossil fuels. So next time you get on a plane and you're like, stop oil, stop, we're all going to die from climate change. You're flying through the sky. You're on your iPad that's made, in large part with fossil fuels, because you need fossil fuels to create it. Fossil fuels are a product that's inside that equipment. You can't have that equipment without having it. But at the same time, I'm thinking maybe they're betting on unicorn farts, folks. Maybe unicorn farts are going to power the grid and keep the planes in the air. What do you guys think? I mean, I haven't really considered unicorn farts as a energy source, but that's about as logical as the green energy scammers that are out there. And speaking of scammers, how about all of the Hollywood entertainment folks that fly on private jets, that have big SUVs, have multiple homes, multiple staff people staffing those homes, and on and on and on, lecturing you and me that we're supposed to ride bikes and walk everywhere and go back to the Stone Ages. How's that working out? And I saw an interview the other day, which was kind of interesting, where they took a look at times when we saw a dramatic reduction in greenhouse gases. And I'm going to pull this up real quick. I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm going to ask the question. And let me just type it in there. How much did emissions drop during the 2020 COVID lockdowns? Remember, you were locked in your house. You couldn't drive. You couldn't go out. You couldn't go anywhere. People weren't traveling. People were too afraid. And I just asked Rock because I want to get the actual percentage. But the interview I saw, let's see. Okay. Wow. So here are the numbers. For that year, and a lot of places were locked down for that year and then some, it fell 7%. So imagine that. You basically tell everybody you can't travel, you can't go out in public, you got to stay locked in your house, it's too dangerous. The economy came to a halt, everything stopped on a dime, and in some cases it started up several months later. But even if you look at the peak, peak average, it was down by 17%. So we literally had a policy where we were going back to the Stone Age. Can't drive a car, can't fly in a plane, can't go anywhere, stay locked down. And globally, you saw a 17% drop. So how bad would it have to get to net zero, folks? Reality check. It ain't ever happening. It's never happening. And the only way it does happen is if you kill 80 to 90% of the people on the planet, and we go back to foraging for our food in the woods. We cut down a tree or two. Oh my God, we're cutting down trees. It's not green. Yeah, that's when you're going to see net zero. So if you're okay with 90% of the population, including your family and friends, being sent packing literally to the netherworld, and you don't have the right to travel in a car, you don't have the right to have air conditioning in your home. Well, maybe we'll let you have heat. We don't want you freezing to death, but definitely no air conditioning. Definitely not. That's very, not green. Then you might see like a 17% drop, 20% drop. And then if you kill everybody, then yeah, you might get down to 60 or 70%. That's the reality check. And that's all I got for you this week. I'm Mark Murphy. It's traveltube.com. Do me a favor, follow us on the site by opting into our weekly newsletter. It takes 2 seconds. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. You can listen to this anywhere. And don't forget to follow us on social media. And there you have it.